Welcome to the Seahawkers podcast. Today we are looking at the QB froth, the frothiness out there. Adam, those QBs just did their thing. They threw at the combine. And I got to tell you, some things I'm seeing on Twitter, some things I'm seeing in our Discord, just everywhere about the Seahawks and what the heck should we do at quarterback. We're going to get into that today. But Adam, are you also feeling that this boiling froth, that white foam is coming to the top as our Seahawks now get ready and get into free agency and get ready for the draft? Do you also sense that people are freaking out a little bit about our QB position?
Yeah, this is the time of year when the foaming at the mouth over QBs definitely commences. And it's interesting too, because it seems to be right around combine time when guys go out there in their underwear and sling it against air. And then people get way more excited about that. And it's like, okay, I mean, the combine, sure, like it's important. You need to get the measurables, and I see all that. But for me personally, man, like trying to get an idea of what a quarterback is or isn't from the combine is nearly pointless. Like the hay is already in the barn for these guys. Like the tape is out there. You got to go back and watch the games. What do they do when they play football? Like that's what I care about, not what they do in drills. I want to see what they do when they play football. But I can understand the excitement for this QB draft class just because, and I'm not the first person to say this by any stretch of imagination, but there's a lot of dudes in this draft class that you're like, maybe. And whether or not any of them are good enough for you to be like, yeah, replace Geno with that dude at, what is it, 15, 16, wherever we're picking?
16, yeah.
16. Whether they're worth it to you or not, I'll leave that up to the listeners, but it's a discussion to be had for sure.
Yeah, we're going to get into all that today. We're going to talk about some of the quarterbacks of the combine, those that threw, those that did not throw. We saw a Softy tweet out there. Dave Softy, I think it's David, right? Dave Softy out there on Twitter, a big, known in the Seattle areas. I'm in Connecticut. I just know him as Softy on Twitter. But a poll he put out today, a couple of hours ago, we should record this on Monday, about the 16th pick and what should our Seattle Seahawks do. So we'll get into all that and then some. And I did want to remind folks, of course, hey, if you're out on YouTube, youtube.com/Seahawkers podcast. Make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications. We go live quite often. I know we'll be doing some live draft day coverage when that hits in April, coming up in just a bit. So all the different discussions. We love our Discord as well. So if you want to, get in theflock.com, become a member of the flock, and then you can be part of the Seahawkers Ring of Honor out on Facebook or join us on the Discord for a couple bucks a month. So, all right. So Adam, I know that you've been studying some of these QBs as we get going. So why don't we start there? Let's hold off on Penix for a second. Let's hold off on Penix.
Okay.
Let's get to, I'd rather go to JJ McCarthy, Michigan, 21 years old. I think he's pretty intriguing. To me, it seems like there's a lot of debate about this dude. What are you seeing so far when you're looking at JJ?
Yeah, it's interesting. Going through, I'm about halfway through the quarterbacks now, and some of them I'm a little deeper into than others. But I don't know that there's any of them that feel like imposters so much to me. Like, they all seem to be legit and real deal guys in some form or another. And I think JJ falls into that equation there. One of the things that I see from him is he definitely ran maybe the most pro style offense of almost all these guys. And he's a guy who can play in time and on rhythm, and he always protects the team, Clinton. Like that's a huge deal, much like today's sponsor.
Absolutely. My favorite credit card has been hacked 3 times in the last 4 years. I wanted to understand why it keeps happening, so I Googled my name. That's a mistake. I found so much personal data floating out there, and it ain't just me. Data brokers sell your information to spammers, scanners, really anybody who wants to target you. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me, and it protects me from hackers who are after information like my social security number, my bank accounts, and other stuff. Frankly, I don't want them to have. I get antivirus, password management, VPN, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. And I don't need to download tons of different apps. I get it all with Aura. And I get everything I just talked about at one affordable price. Look, I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Hawkra to start your 2-week free trial right now. And yes, of course, it is linked in this video description. Excellent. I gotta tell you, Adam, $12 a month, that's got a nice ring to it because 12, it matters to us, I think.
It totally fits in, and it seems like a great product for sure. Much like JJ McCarthy's tape that when I went through and watched it, man, like I'll say, I think I'm probably a little higher on McCarthy than a lot of other people. He looks like a dude who can go out there and really run a pro style offense in time, in rhythm, and he hits his spots with consistency. He's mobile. He's not crazy mobile. I don't think it's going to translate. It's going to be about, I don't know, just a smidge better than Baker mobile when you
Mm.
get to the NFL. Like a lot of times I feel like when we're watching these college guys run around against the other collegiate athletes, they appear faster than they do. And I think he got away with his legs a little bit more in college than he will in the NFL. But he's intriguing to me, especially depending on where he comes to the Seahawks and the draft. Now, um, I don't know. What did you see when you were looking at Penix, or not Penix, but McCarthy?
Yeah, I've got a couple things about him as well. And while you were talking about him being like mobile enough, I'm going to hopefully coin a term out there because I think it's the first I've ever heard it like described this way. But I'm going to call JJ McCarthy also move the chains mobile. It's like, hey, it's 3rd and 6, dude gets 6.5. Kind of Patrick Mahomes mobile, right? It's like you're not expecting Patrick Mahomes to pull off a Steve Young 72-yard run, and certainly not Lamar Jackson style running. But it's 3rd and 5, and lo and behold, he's stretching the ball out and getting 5.5 yards and moving the chains. For me though, the thing with JJ was I'm watching Milton, I'm watching Spencer Rattler, who I thought threw the ball pretty well. I'm watching these other dudes, and Milton's got this amazing hose of an arm at Tennessee, throwing the ball 73 yards in the air. People are going gaga. It's cool. These are incredibly gifted athletes. That's fine.
Mhm.
And I'm watching Bo Nix and dudes like that, and I'm like, look, these guys are in there, no pads. The route they're running, and yet I felt like a lot of quarterbacks were still late. Like like throw with anticipation, throw your dude open. And I felt like dudes were like late. I know they're not your receivers. I get all that, but they're running a post, and they're running a post. And then I watched JJ, and I'm like, oh, he's really, for me, super on time, super
Yep.
understood. Like, and I know that's combine but I think it also
No, his
right.
game
Yeah,
tape lines up with that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. And then his third down percentage, he led CFB in like whatever it was, like 3rd and long in some stat of converting. And that's when you got to throw the ball, make the outside throws, and make the NFL throws in an NFL style offense. To me, JJ McCarthy feels like he's an on-time quarterback, and I think he's got plenty of arm,
Oh yeah.
to go around the NFL. And I'm looking at us at 16. Now I am anti us. I still don't want a quarterback. I just don't think it is our biggest need. We could talk about that. I'm sure we will, especially when we get into the softy tweet. But after watching the combine, and then again the frothy season we're in, I don't think JJ lasts to 16. I think he's going to end up being, I don't know, somewhere 12, maybe lower, because there's a lot of teams, at Atlanta, Raiders, Giants, Patriots. I mean, there's a lot of teams, Commanders. So of course I know there are 2, but there's a lot of teams that need a quarterback, man. There's a lot. Broncos, which, Russ just got the axe today. So Broncos need a quarterback as well. I don't see JJ McCarthy lasting that long. I think he's an NFL quarterback, and he could pitch to be a very, very good one. In fact.
Yeah. I think his ceiling is kind of the best years of Alex Smith, maybe, or like, I don't know that he's ever going to be a top 5 type quarterback in the league, but he could be in that consistent top 10-ish area there, a little like Geno is now, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
Kirk Cousins or something like that. I think that's something that he can accomplish for sure. Depends on where they go. And that's kind of the thing with all of these guys, like where do you end up? But the one thing you mentioned about guys being late and stuff like that,
Yeah.
this college quarterback class to me, is I've especially going through the top guys, or as far as I've gotten down here, this is the most off schedule centric QB draft class I have ever seen. Like
Mm.
these are all like just scramblers that play out of schedule, out of rhythm, and can occasionally hit a rhythm throw when it's boil down to a one read kind of situation or just a quick bubble or something like that. You had sent me some of the tweets from Kurt Warner talking about just being like, how do you make anything of these guys? Like,
Mhm.
bad or good, right? Because the college offense is so rinky dink compared to the NFL that it's almost impossible to be able to tell which of these guys are capable of making big boy, tight window NFL throws. Because as you watch the clips of these guys throw after throw after throw, and you get little clips of the announcers, and you'll be like, "Ooh, that was a tight window throw," and you're like, "That was wide ass open in the NFL." Like, just the bar is different. Like, we're grading
Yeah.
on a different scale, and it's tough to tell. I'm having a really difficult time, to be honest, especially with these top guys,
Mm.
because they are so much off script and off schedule, and there's just not enough on schedule to really hang your hat on with any sort of consistency. So, I mean, we are in love with the off script stuff these days for sure. I mean, because you do need your quarterback to be able to do a little bit of that too, but they also need to be able to just run the freaking offense. Like,
Yeah.
that's a big deal. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been interesting, and I'm excited to kind of complete the QB process, really get my notes in order, and kind of break these guys down one by one. But yeah, these guys there are a lot of guys out there just kind of winging it, and it's either one read or scramble around and wing it.
I mean, Kale, I mean, I know you're going to I'm excited for your deep dive on those. And in
Yeah.
fact, I encourage you to maybe put out, on a small series this year
Okay.
to add to it. That'd be a lot of
Yeah.
fun. I'll help if you need, but
Okay.
Caleb Williams holds on to the ball like basically the longest in all of college football. Drake May, he's kind of a chaos quarter. He's kind of off script chaos, right?
Big time.
So Jaden Daniels, again, it's a bit of that off script and then going for those big broken plays, and which is cool. And I think even Penix to a certain extent is, which I do want to talk about as well. But I think Penix also is like, look, the offense they're running. I know that you had some challenges with what Grubb was putting out there. I did watch some other takes, other videos that were like, hey, Grubb's offense is actually pretty pro level. It's that Penix was mainly going to the first read. And if it was remotely open, he'd freaking wing it. He'd be like, okay, okay, it's Roma Doozy. I'll try it out there. And so I agree with you. It's like, it's cool to see the quarterbacks who have the arm talent, which they clearly do. The arm talent's there, right? And then the playmaking ability off script. And I don't think there's too many quarterbacks in the back to him, the JJ category, that are going through NFL style progressions and be like, okay, first read, second read. Oh, nope. Okay, my check down's here, or my backside guy's here, and that's going to be open because of something I saw on the other side of the field. But I see him doing it, and I think that's going to be very attractive to certain teams versus the flash of some of the just the pure talent that's out there. And I want to jam one dude in that I thought was, I don't know much about. Watched him in the combine a bit, but the kid from Kentucky, Devin Leary. So the one preface I'll say is, look, when they threw the deep ball stuff, he underthrew almost every single deep ball. So once you were trying to really push the ball 55 yards plus in air downfield, 55, 60, it wasn't there. He threw the ball quite hard, plenty of velocity, but of all the other dudes throwing, I don't hear anybody talking about him, but I was like, oh, he looks like he's a good thrower of the football. Like, he's on time. He's in rhythm. I don't know much about him. Don't know if you had a chance to look at Leary at all yet in your, in your pursuits.
You had mentioned you wanted to take a peek at him or talk about him a little bit. So I watched his bowl game against Clemson, just every throw. And so the initial impressions, again, I haven't gotten through enough to be real definitive on any of this. A very loopy, long throwing motion. It just massively over the top, right? Like, kind of really loops it back and comes almost straight down like a karate chop. Again, he was the other guy so far that I've looked at that I've been like, oh my gosh, okay, here are some pro level type concepts, being under center, running a lot of play action, not super mobile. I don't even know if he's functionally mobile enough. But again, initial impressions. And in this particular game, when he did have to throw on the run, that ain't it, man.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
lack of arm strength deep downfield that showed up there too. His receivers weren't doing him any favors either. They weren't winning at the top of their routes and their one-on-ones very often. Again, one game, initial impressions. That's kind of how it hit me.
Well, more than I saw. I saw him throwing in a t-shirt, right? So, and some sort of spandex, and he looked like he could throw. But one thing you just brought up, which I also texted you about this before. I'm like, look, you said, hey, when Leary had to get outside the pocket and throw on the move, things were deteriorating. And other quarterbacks, again, JJ, quite good at that. Penix, somewhat pretty good at that. But it shocks me, man, in that in 2024 we go through this whole combine process, and they'll line up quarterbacks to throw the go ball to see how deep they can throw. Cool. They go through the route tree, the different route tree. They run the 40, some of them. They throw a ball against the big pad to see how fast they can throw, just to get pure arm velocity, like how fast can they throw a football in short distance. Okay, cool. They don't do anything where they ask the quarterback to boot and throw. And I do not understand that. Is like, oh, you got to make all the NFL throws. Is throwing on the run, Adam, is throwing on the run an NFL throw, or is that just, no, everybody could do that? That's cake.
Yeah, that is the difference between guys that, gosh, let me think, like Mason Rudolph and say even Brock Purdy, right? Like Brock Purdy can get out, run around a little bit, throw on the run, and that makes up for his lack of stature a little bit. I think he has adequate arm strength. But like Rudolph, big arm, all that stuff, doesn't really move all that well, doesn't throw great on the run. And therefore you have a ceiling. And yeah, I think this is a weird thing that they don't do. Maybe they just save it for the pro days, man, so that we have something to talk about during the pro days, which are about as ridiculous to me as the combine is in many ways. And, we've all had that one pro day that we've gotten duped by. And boy, did Zach Wilson get me with that flip of the hips and like heaving it, running to his left, flip the hips, heave it 60 yards with the flick of the wrist. Yeah, I will never, ever, ever again fall for pro day type throws, but they do make a move at least at the pro day. But yeah, at the combine, it seems odd that you wouldn't want to test or just see the fluidity of the athlete, without the chaos around him.
Yeah, unless I missed a gigantic section, which I don't think I did, and people could yell at me if I did on YouTube. I'm just like, this is just 5-step, 3-step. Yeah, cool, but I want to see these quarterbacks at least on the move a little bit. And like you said, that's why I can go back to the tape, and the tape don't lie. But I'll keep saying, when you go back to JJ McCarthy's tape, he's actually really, really good out of the pocket. He's really good and insanely accurate.
Yeah.
When I was looking at him, I was like, oh man, this dude reminds me of like a stronger arm Chad Pennington, not a bullet arm, not an Elway type arm, but a stronger arm Pennington, who was a darn good NFL quarterback who could move the chains and had a very good long career. So that was kind of my, not so much a comp. It was more just reminded me of that dude, but again, with a more beefier arm than Pennington ever had,
and way more mobile. More mobile.
Oh yeah, Pennington was Pennington was, but the dude could fit in tight windows and could make things happen outside the pocket enough on the run, just with accuracy, just drop it in the bucket. And also, I don't need the flip the hip, throw it 60 yards downfield. I want to see them booting into like a levels concept. Like that's, and can you hit the dude with anticipation and still on the run? Oh, what's the Notre Dame, the good looking Notre Dame guy? It's Hartman. Wait, no. What is it?
Hartman. There it is. It's Sam. Hartman. His first name is Sam. Brawny guy. He looks like the brawny paper towel guy, man. That is a handsome dude.
Oh, he's
That's
too
a
handsome
man. Yeah.
He's way too handsome. The thing about Hartman, the dude was throwing ambulance balls at the combine. I was oh my God, like he's late. Everything's high. Bo Nix, everything went to the dude. I was like, Bo Nix is low consistently and not on time. Hartman, it was like, dude, he's gonna get his guys killed. Like if he's playing in the NFL, there will be, like Madden style ambulances out on the field all game long, which leads me to believe he's not gonna be playing too much in the NFL. I just don't see enough there. He's rather handsome. This much we know for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, you don't draft him thinking that he's a solution as a starter. Like that's just not. He could be maybe a serviceable backup if he really works on his craft and all that. Like I'm talking about guys' ceilings, right? I don't like just being like, well, that dude sucks, or, this, that, the other thing. Right. Like, I'm not saying that's what you were saying, but,
Right. But I hear you.
but you're like, yep, there's problems with this dude's game at the NFL level. And really it showed up in the 2 games I've watched of him, at Notre Dame there. So, yeah, it definitely lines up for sure.
Yeah.
The Hartman stuff. Now, you talked about Penix a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
give me some of your Penix thoughts, because I have a few.
Cool. So I will lead out with this. I mentioned it earlier that Dave Softy, I think it's Dave Softy Jr., right? So Softy is, as he's known in the PNW, he put out a tweet today, just about 3 hours ago now, and I haven't refreshed it, but even at that point, the tweet was, should Seattle take Penix at 16th overall if he's there? That was it. Cool. Good enough question. Almost 6,000 votes when I checked it. 67%, 2/3. Yes. 33%, 1/3 no. So that was just, again, talking about QB froth. I think we are at the peak froth of like folks salivating over what they just saw, how they can envision it on their team, and then listening to all the podcasts and reading all the blogs and all the other pieces about how this dude could be the next, insert great Josh Allen, how this dude could be the next Patrick Mahomes, dare I say the next Tom Brady, et cetera, et cetera. And while that all might be correct, here's my take on Penix. I think Penix has incredible arm talent. Incredible. Like he spins the ball like nobody else. Literally the revolution of the ball. It's such a tight looking football. I've seen enough, UW games where I ended up watching 3 or 4 down the stretch, including the Michigan game, but not limited to the Michigan game, that I think he'll also take his chances and he can fit the ball in tight windows. Beyond that, I think he's got a really high ceiling because the talent is legitimately there. Now, but that's my take. That's where my take ends currently, because as I said earlier, I voted on that thing. No, I do not want Seattle drafting Michael Penix at 16th overall. I think we have a really good solution, and there's a really good deep interior O-line class. So going to get the best dude you love at interior O-line who could swing into guard or play out and tackle if Abe can't do it this year again with his knee, to me, is a really smart move. So that's where my brain's at. So that's a little bit less about Penix, but what I want the Seahawks to do. But what about you, dude? What are you seeing? I know you watched a few now. Is the froth worth it? What do you think? If there's a fever pitch around Penix at this point, do you think it's legit?
Well, a couple things. So I don't think we're at the peak of the frothing. I really don't. That's usually like the day before the draft. I mean, this quarterback stuff is just going to continue to crescendo past the pro days, all that stuff.
Interesting. Okay.
Remember last year when everybody decided they were just going to start hitting the ceiling of their dome that they were having their pro day in, and everybody would lose their mind?
Yeah.
It just crap like that. And so it's going to continue, and the hype train is going to continue to move on. Is the throwing motion funky? Yes. Can he spin it? You betcha. No doubt about it. About 4 games into Penix stuff, in including the Michigan game. He's definitely, of all of them, the least capable so far that I've seen at making off-platform throws. Dude needs to have his feet set and be relatively in rhythm. I mean, he can move around the pocket a little bit and find another spot to get his feet set and then sling it. I like that. And I think he reminds me a bit of Phil Rivers, just a lefty Phil Rivers with a little bit more wheels. And he can be very good. He can be very good. There's one of the things that I maybe weigh more heavily than other people is, what did they do in the biggest moments? And like Russell Wilson going against Kirk Cousins in I think it was the Rose Bowl or whatever it was, whatever game. Yeah, when he was Wisconsin, and both those dudes just trading haymakers back and forth, big time throws and big time moments, for all the marbles at the end of their season. And Penix in that Michigan game, he missed at least 4 wide open dudes, like not drops. Like he had others that were drops too. Like I'm not just looking at the numbers or anything like that. And that was really alarming to me. Like this is the biggest moment of your career. You're the dude. You're the dude. You can't melt down and miss the gimmies. How often do we talk about NFL quarterbacks and we look at Jimmy Garoppolo and go, the reason the Niners didn't win that Super Bowl is he missed that one throw. Oh, Jared Goff, they didn't win that Super Bowl at the Rams because he missed Cooks deep or whoever it was. And we talked about that with Geno at times in the last 2 years. Like, ooh, he just missed on those 1 or 2 throws. And, Penix missed on like 4. Maybe it may have been more. I'd have to go back and really chart it. But it was the alarming part to me. And then I think the thing that I haven't heard too many people talking about on the regular anyways is how are his knees? Can you really clear that with medical? And that's a big risk. Does that kind of knock him out of top 15 in some ways? I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but it would concern me. But to your point of the poll, yes or no, should you take Penix at 16 if he's there? If they did, would I be pissed? No. There's things to his game where I'm like, okay, roll the dice. If you love it, John, let's go. Cool. But for me personally, man, give me a pick in the trenches. And I know it's a broken record out of me. I know it is, but it's because we don't do it. And it's one of the reasons why we have struggled the last couple of years. And I can't see Mike being like, yep, let's start building this thing with quarterback first instead of offensive line first, because when you start doing that, you get quarterbacks killed when they're young and then they're ruined and they're seeing ghosts like Sam Darnold.
Yeah, it was a little bit shocking to me. Again, I do think it's peak froth season. It may percolate a bit more, and I understand what you're getting at, that there's still the pro days, but the pro day is going to be Caleb Williams doing his thing, who didn't do a darn thing at the combines, and and Jaden and Drake May, and others, and then others might do their pro day on top of that too. So I understand it could still get frothier yet. But what I think what also happens as you get closer to the actual draft is some of the population starts to come off of the combine high, call it that, and then realize like, oh, and also what happens is free agency has started, right? So the legal tampering starts in just a couple of days. Your team starts to get fleshed out a bit more. So you get to see, okay, we're just a draft away now. All we got is a draft and maybe a few more moves post-draft, and that's it. This is the team for the year. So I think people start to come back to the center, if you will, of like, okay, what do we really need versus what did I get excited about during the combine part? With all that, the piece on, I'm with you that I think Penix's ceiling is legitimately high. I think the dude he could be a very good NFL quarterback. I'm still unsold. If they want to do it, I'm going to cheer it when it happens because it's our team, right? Mm-hmm. I just don't think it's a good allocation or a good idea this year to go do that. But I think I'm in the minority. I think there's plenty of people who think Geno could pitch into like a top 7, maybe even top 5 QB, right system, and give him a Dak Prescott type of line, or 80% of a Prescott line he's had his career, and he could easily pitch, I think, into that top 7, top 5, which is something. But I think I'm also further onto the Geno wave in terms of, I don't think it has to be a 1-year thing. I don't look at Geno and be like, okay, well, this is his last year. He had 3 years as a Seahawks quarterback, and this is it. I look at this and go, oh, there's a chance. And if I had to say, is it probable or improbable, I would give it more probable than not right now that this becomes Geno's best year as a Seahawk. I think it's more probable because of what they're doing, like the changes there and what I think the offensive philosophy will be. Now, it could all crash and burn. We've talked about that. And, and you've laid your opinion out there about what you think of Grubb and how he's going to prove some things. And I agree, still got to prove it on an NFL level. But I think if I had to gauge it, I'd say it's more probable he has the best year of his career so far. and best as a Seahawk in 3 years. So then I'm like, well, why would we not keep him for a 4th year?
Yeah.
Why do we have to give up, especially if the team is progressing again? If we make,
Mhm.
if linebacker, Lord knows we need some
Yeah.
linebackers in defensive trench, offensive trench. If we make some moves in that direction, and whether or not we make the playoffs, make a run or don't, I think there's other ways to gauge progress than just wins and losses for certain. So it'd be interesting for me, Adam. I just think we're going to get to a point, I think, halfway through the year or so, and we're talking about, oh, can we get Geno on a team-friendly extension? Is there a way to get him for 2-3 more years, kick some money down the road, and keep him in this really sweet spot of paying a dude under $30 million, where other guys, where the Broncos now have to go eat, they have to eat 85 million or so in dead cap space. So
Mhm.
I just think that's a pretty likely outcome, where I'm not in a rush to go grab a backup. I'm a new QB in this draft, and certainly not for me in the first round. If we sneak back into the second round too, I don't want a quarterback there either. And I think I'm in the minority when I take it that far, but I don't know. It's how I feel.
I don't have big feelings about it one way or the other, but the idea that this is more likely to be Geno's best year than less, I'm going to put a big old fat hard telling not knowing on that one. And it really does
Sure.
all revolve around the grub aspect of things. I mean, it's completely different. We don't know how these two are going to jive together. We don't know how Grub's system is going to translate. We don't know any of that stuff. And we don't know how, Mike is going to coach and take the team overall. I do think that with this coaching change, it's pretty safe to say that we're never going to win a Super Bowl with Geno Smith as our quarterback. And if that's the case, because it's going to take a couple years for this coaching staff to get their system together and their processes and really get on the trajectory that we all hope that they will. And I'm not saying that as a knock on any of them.
Mm.
It's just, it's a very young green staff as a whole. And I'm completely willing to give these guys 2-3 years to get it figured out. Coach Mike for sure 3,
Yeah.
Grub at least 2. Like, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater yet. Like, they've got a lot of growing pains that they're going to need to go through as a staff. And even hear John talking about it here at the combine, which I think this is the more interesting part of the combine, is the GM's talking and all the scuttlebutt that comes out from everybody being in the same building all the time and all that stuff than the underwear Olympics. I think that's much more interesting. But yeah, I don't think that the window lines up with Geno's play and this team in the way that it is going to progress going forward. So if you want to get younger at the quarterback position, hurry up and do it now. Fine. I'm
Mm.
fine with it. I don't care, but I do believe, and the other part of it is, Clinton, this particular draft has a lot of guys in it, in the quarterback position where you're like, man, you could get that kind of guy in the 3rd. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would give that a flyer, right? Like, and then say Bo Nix falls to 16. Does that, wet your whistle? Are you now going, now you
No.
just watched combine, right?
No. I watched a number of Oregon games too, including the UW Oregon games. Where I understand the piece of Penix where you were like, hey, didn't do it in the biggest moments. He did it in the semis versus Texas. He did it 3 times versus Oregon.
Oh,
Those are
for
good
sure.
teams. Those were good teams, right?
For
So
sure.
I understand the Michigan part, but I'm like, I would push back and be like, well, all college is weird. You got to win every freaking game, right?
Yes.
Or at least till next year when it becomes a 12 team. And if you're FSU, you could still win and find yourself on the outside looking in because you lost your quarterback, right? So it's just it's a weird thing. So I do think that kind of pressure in all those Oregon games, and pressure in that Texas game, they were all national championship in that way, that if they don't win, they're not even in the dance. They wouldn't be in the Final
Of
Four there.
course.
So just giving a little bit of love back to Penix. But no, but with Bo Nix, I ended up watching a lot of those games. I think he's fine, but no, not at 16, not for me. There's
Okay.
like a couple of dudes that if JJ McCarthy is there at 16 and they take him, I'm more amenable to that, because I think he's a more ready NFL quarterback, and he's 21 versus going on 25. It's a quarterback, so I'm not too disturbed by that. It's not like it's a running back. That's way too different.
Story.
But 21 versus 24 is something. And I'm not anti-Penix. I think Penix is going to be a good baller. I would rather be, if we could find that dude in the third round, like you were saying. I like as a plan. I like that as a plan. I'm also not against. You want to bring Drew Lock back at a team-friendly, even more team-friendly deal, and be like, we still think Drew can progress and can have a Geno-like arc. I'm not against that. I think he could still learn and progress and still peak, and he does have the arm talent. So I'm open to that as well. I'm just the piece that I think you made me think about was the alignment. And when you said it, I kind of had like a allergic reaction to, chances are, the way you framed it was like, chances are they're not going to win with Geno in this stretch. And then you went on to explain why. And I had like a bit of a visual reaction to it. But then I'm like, you know what? But you're right for a few reasons. Number one, 31 teams lose. First and foremost, it is hard to win a Super Bowl. Is this team in the next year or two without getting really great, really like another knockout, 1 or 2 drafts and just hitting on free agency? Are they an elite?
And Mike being the man and Grubb
those things,
being the man and like
those
hitting on
too.
all of it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Are they elite right now as a roster? No, they're not. And why? Well, again, we don't have a linebacker. Like there's no linebackers. We don't have a tight end right now. Like, and I realize other teams, like they're going to go through free agency. They don't have dudes either, but we literally don't have a linebacker right now. And I'm not into bringing Bobby back for nostalgia's sake. It's like, no, we need to get a lot faster. I'd like to bring Brooks back if we can at a good deal and then get faster in that position. In my opinion, we don't really have a right guard right now. Bradford might be it, but I don't know, especially the type of movement type guards that I think Grubb and team are going to want if they emulate what they did at UW, if that's what they want to go emulate, where Bradford was body. Well, right. We'll see. Bradford was a pretty good run blocking body mover, but then there was other, call it challenges, but that's to be expected. He's a mid-round dude in a rookie year. I think he was commendable. So just thinking about the roster, I think we are further away than I would like us to be. Mm-hmm. And I still think we're in a tough, I think the Rams knocked it out of the park with their draft last year. And the Niners, the only thing I'm banking on there, man, is that Super Bowl hangover is legitimate and they actually unravel a bit and gives us a chance to be competing for the NFC West again, probably with the Rams. What do you think of that, dude? I know like once the Super Bowl was over, you were pretty much like, yep, this is it. Shanahan's that was their last shot. Do you still feel that way a couple of weeks on?
I feel even more ardent about it. Like I've listened to a lot of the 49ers podcasts and player interviews and them all breaking down what everybody's been saying and all that. This is the beginning of the end of this era of the San Francisco 49ers. Like that's the type of loss that rivals the play that shall not be named. Like, Shanahan might be around for a long time still and all that stuff, but that was it. That's the last time that those guys will be in a Super Bowl. It's over. Guys don't trust each other anymore. And you see like Ayuk wanting to get paid and the things that he was saying. You saw Bosa, the way that he basically took Wilkes and drove over him with both axles of the bus, threw it in reverse, did it again, and then floored it one more time going back over him. Like it was gnarly. But to your point of competing and in the time frame in everything, yeah, I do see the Niners going down on decline. And the reason why I think we're further away in the next 2 years from being in a Super Bowl now than we were if we had kept Pete for next year is only because, and this isn't a connotation of Pete is way better than McDonald's going to be and all that stuff. This is not what I'm saying in any way, shape, or form. So do not get it twisted.
Because don't worry. The YouTube comments will absolutely get it twisted.
They will get it twisted. What I am saying is that it's going to take a year or two for McDonald to get Pete's guys that he wants to keep on board and on the plan, and then get rid of the other guys that he does not want to keep, that does not fit with his vision moving forward. And there's going to have to be a fair amount of change. So I know John said he's not big on the idea of rebuild and like, we're really close to winning and all that stuff. And honestly, it's like, I understand that feeling and I do like the roster in a lot of ways, but if Mike Macdonald is going to be the success that I think he can and will be, then we got to rebuild this roster in his image in over the next couple of years. And by doing that, it kind of takes you, statistically speaking, out of the running to hoisting the Lombardi in the next 2 years. Does that mean that it could lead to hoisting the Lombardi 4 times in the following 5? Sure. Like it's not me poo-pooing.
But to your point though, if that happens at that point, then you are very, very likely onto that next gen quarterback, which is where you started the whole point, right? So I could follow that logic. It is because it's logical and it makes sense. And when, like I said, you said it and I had a bad reaction to it, then I was like, oh well, thinking this through, yeah, I've become a big time. Funny, man. I became a big time Geno homer, and I was more convinced after this season, after these last 8 games, with a deteriorating line and our unwillingness to run the friggin' ball. Like I'm glad we made the change we made at offensive coordinator, at least. Not saying whether Grubb hits or doesn't.
Absolutely.
I was fully off the Waldron plan. I was like, I don't think we have philosophy. I don't understand that he understands when to ride certain players. This guy's got a hot hand, make them stop it. Never, ever, ever did we see that. Maybe one time that comes back to mind is like DK versus Dallas last year, where DK blew up for 3 touchdowns. Okay, cool. And I really do think with Grubb, we're gonna see, oh, this team has a mismatch versus JSN. All right, JSN's getting 13 balls thrown his way. And then the next week, this team can't, it has problems in space. Yeah, it's the Ken Walker show today. I just think he's going to do those types of things, which I'm really quite excited for, actually. And then, Adam, I did have one more scenario for you, which I think will lead us towards the draft day. There's been a good amount of talk. So if Seattle is not fixed on a quarterback, and there's a good amount of trench players and an overload in a good way to the offensive side, it seems like. Now, want to paint 2 scenarios. You're John Schneider. You have a player, you like an interior, let's say guard or a right tackle that can clearly play and projects as a guard in the NFL, or a center that can go the other way and play guard, because we need those spaces. So you get a dude on your board who you love at 16, or you could go back, you can make a trade back into whatever it is, doesn't really matter, but let's say it's the 20s, and there's a tier of people you really like, but you gain a 2nd round pick. Let's say you gain a mid 2nd rounder or a late 2nd round. You get back into the 2nd round. 2nd round picks are very valuable in the NFL. If you had just had to make a choice today, dude you love, your number 1 interior guy, a group of dudes you like, and you feel confident we'll get one of those 3, plus you get a 2nd rounder. What do you think you'd do if you were Schneider in this moment?
Now, does he love him or does he love him? Right? Like that's kind of how it is for me, man. Like I just remember the year of the Russ draft, and I so wish that Brandon and I had started the show then, because I was beyond in love with Russell Wilson. Like I loved him, right? Like if John feels that way about a dude, then take him at 16 by all means, if you don't think he's going to be there, if you can trade back. But if you're like, yeah, I love him, like I'd give him a promise ring, like that kind of love, right? Like, yeah, it might someday lead to a wedding, but, or maybe an engagement. We'll see. Then yeah, I'd probably trade back. I mean, really, you talk about it all the time. The idea that these are all scratchers. They're just, lottery tickets. And the more lottery tickets that you play, and this is a little what the Rams did last year, right? They ended up with a crap ton of back half of the draft picks, and they hit on like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And then that turns into a nice draft. yeah, I would like to see John acquire more picks if he feels like, as he's always talking about the tiers, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
it's these guys, and then it's the next level, the next ledge, and then the next ledge. If the guy that's sitting there at 16 is at the bottom of that first ledge, and then, the next ledge of guys, there's 10 of them, and you're pretty likely to get one of them in the next couple picks, and then pick up an extra pick, then I'd probably go that route.
Yeah, I get it. So it's variable. And I wanted to gauge it there because when we traded Leo, we traded for Leo, I was all for it. I was also hopped up on believing we could compete because I'm an optimist, and turned out we really weren't quite there. Although we're a field goal away from being in the playoffs, and then you do not know. You do not know what happens once you make the dance.
Yeah.
So bad on you, Myers. But with all that, yeah, it's these are the type of things where I think it's going to be quite interesting as we obviously get closer to the draft. And that's where I also think the people that froth will defroth a little bit.
I don't know, man. They start fomenting, man. Like, and
well,
it goes.
Well, the other piece, yeah.
Maybe
The
it's
other
just because the draft annoys me. Maybe that's what the problem is.
See, and I love the draft. It's the combine, and I'm like, I'm okay with it. It doesn't do too much for me. The draft process, I really do dig, and I've gotten more and more into. Like, I don't do mock drafts. However, I will say I've gotten to understand why people do them, and then I absorb mock drafts because then I learn the players. I'll listen to somebody talk about, I went through this process. This is what I think based on needs. And then I'm like, okay, now at least I have a good baseline of dudes I know. Not that I'm going to come on and profess about them watching tape, but at least when I do watch the draft, I'm like, I have a better semblance of can they matter to our Seahawks, or do the Niners just get somebody I don't want to compete against, et cetera, et cetera. So, but it's gonna be it's gonna be fun. We got a lot. It's still early March. This will come out probably like March 6, 7 or something like that. We also know that if you're watching this, then you've already watched Brandon had EJ Snyder back on. And for the first year ever, the Bootleg Boys, they were at the combine. So, EJ and Brett killing it as always for bootleg football, but they were down the ground. So I'd imagine their purview and their perspective is going to shine through. So folks, if you're seeing this now and you haven't seen the Brandon and EJ episode, go back and make sure you check that one out. And Adam, what else should the folks be doing before we cut loose tonight?
Oh, well, this is a value for value situation, boys and girls. If you've made it to this point, you got some value out of this. I know you did. So, if you could kick us back a like, a subscribe, a little share with maybe some of your friends, your other fellow 12s, that'd be amazing, man, because the more we grow, the more we do. And we appreciate the support very much.
Absolutely. Of course, gettingtheflock.com if you want to go there and contribute to the show. Monthly donations, it keeps the fuel going. And of course, what really keeps the fuel going is all y'all on these great topics. So we appreciate it a ton. So Adam, I think we are only 48 days away from the draft. So we'll see how it all bakes down. And of course, we have free agency before that. So I think, Adam, with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.